Hello. Hi, everyone. I am about to start. Just waiting a few seconds for a few more to join. I see your people joining. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let me go ahead and get started as people join. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. It's noon time here in Boston, Massachusetts. This webinar is about the Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we go to the details, just quickly about me. My name is Jayanthi Ganapathy. I am the founder and CEO of FinAccurate LLC. We are an accounting firm based in Boston, Massachusetts. We work with small businesses, primarily in manufacturing, wholesale, and distribution, helping them on the monthly accounting, CFO services, and tax planning services. Prior to starting my own firm 5 years ago, I worked for multinational companies for 11 years in various capacities. And I always wanted to start something on my own to use my knowledge and skills to serve small businesses. So that's how I started my own accounting firm 5 years ago, and I am working closely with small businesses. So today's topic is about Paycheck Protection Program, the specifically the loan forgiveness application guideline that we received from SBA about 10 days ago. So objective of this presentation, this is an educational webinar that I've been doing since the start of CARES Act. So this is not a direct legal or tax advice to you. This is only to help small businesses and their employees to take advantage of the CARES Act provisions. So attendees in this webinar, I believe you already received your PPP 7A loan, and that is the reason you're here to understand the rules around how we can get this loan forgiven. If you haven't received the loan, this may not be relevant for you because I'm going to only focus on the loan forgiveness, the calculation, the rules, what documentation needs to be submitted around the PPP 7A. There are people still applying for 7A, the PPP loan. The funds are still left. If you haven't already applied, you are still encouraged to apply, and there's about $100 billion still left on this program to be used. So this webinar focus is primarily on the loan forgiveness. So let's go ahead. So here is the SBA and Treasury Paycheck Program Forgiveness Application. This guideline was released by SBA on Friday, May 15th. So we all know we applied for the loan, and there weren't clear guidelines as to how the loan is going to be forgiven, and we were all waiting for this specific instruction from SBA. So we do have the application now. So here is the actual announcement. This is on the SBA website, and here you can see the specific process or the key information that's included. So the options for borrowers to calculate payroll cost using an alternative payroll cover period. So they came up with the alternative payroll cover period. What does that mean? So as per the original PPP loan application, we all know the 8-week period started from the date of actual disbursement of the loan. Let's say you received the funds in your bank account on April 20th. That was the day one of the 8-week period. So that was the rule we all are aware. But through this guideline, they came up with the another terminology called alternative payroll cover period, because the date of disbursement didn't always align with your actual pay period. Let's say April 20th is when you received your payroll or your PPP loan dispersed in your bank account, but your payroll started from April 22nd, then it makes it difficult for you to adjust the payroll for from instead of starting from April 20th, you had to adjust to start it from April 20th. To avoid this difficulty, SBA is allowing us to use to elect an alternative payroll cover period. So you could say, instead of going with the April 20th, the date of disbursement, as day one, you can elect to go with April 22nd, which is the alternate pay period. That's when your payroll started. So to make the calculation easier, to run your payroll reports, so it makes it all very easy to do the weekly calculation and also provide documentation. So there's an option for you to change the coverage period to align with your payroll. We'll see more as we go through more into this presentation. And the second point as part of this guideline is flexibility to include eligible payroll and non-payroll expenses paid or incurred during the 8-week period after receiving the PPP loan. So the expenses that you're going to claim as part of the loan has to be paid and incurred actually. So after the loan disbursement, your payroll or your rent, utilities, all of those expenses has to be incurred during the 8-week period and also paid. Only exception here is, let's say your 8-week period ends on June 15th, but your payroll disbursement is on June 17th, 2 days later. So though the payroll has been incurred within that June 15th period, but paid on June 17th, you can include the June 17th payroll based on the payment as part of your 8-week loan forgiveness calculation. I'm just explaining the theory here, but when we go into the presentation, you will see how this all goes into the application. And there's also step-by-step instruction on how to calculate the eligibility for loan forgiveness included in this application and the instructions provided by SBA. And borrower-friendly implementation of statutory exemption for loan forgiveness reduction based on rehiring by June 30th. We all know there are 2 other criteria for claiming exemption. One, you have to maintain the same level of full-time equivalent FTE throughout that 8-week period. If you're not able to maintain, as long as you rehire the employees by June 30th, then you are assumed to have fulfilled the FTE criteria. So that still stays. And in addition to that, this is an interesting one, addition of a new exemption from the loan forgiveness reduction for borrowers who have made a good faith written offer to rehire workers that was declined. So during the 8-week period, prior to the 8-week period, you laid off employees or furloughed employees. Now with the PPP loan, you have the funds to pay payroll. You are rehiring them back, bringing them back for either the same payroll or could be a reduction in payroll, but the employee is refusing to join because could be any different reason. The primary reason being unemployment that they are receiving is much higher than the salary that they were getting before. So employees are not interested to join. So if you make this provision helps employers if you made the offer for the employee to be rehired either for the same salary or for a reduction, but the employee is not accepting, then the employer is not penalized for that FTE reduction. As long as you document that you made a good faith offer and you made a written offer and you document that the employee refused to come back, as long as you document the entire process, then you are exempt from fulfilling the FTE criteria. So we will see that as we go into the details as well. So going into the SBA loan forgiveness application, This is the rules and regulations are released together by the SBA and the US Department of Treasury. This is key here. It is the borrower's responsibility to apply for forgiveness. So the forgiveness is not automatic. So you got the loan, you have the PPP loan amount in your bank account. It's not going to be automatically forgiven or turned into the loan that you don't have to pay back. You do have to request for the loan to be forgiven. So I have had people saying, yeah, I got the loan. I know as long as I spend it in the 8 weeks, it's going to be forgiven. It's not automatic. Whoever you applied with, it could be your bank or where you normally bank with for your business, or you went into another financial lender. Whoever you applied with, you have to. There is a process. That's what we are going to focus on in this webinar here. There's a process and application and that you need to fill out, and documentation that's required that you need to submit and request for forgiveness. So the documentation, number one, you have to apply for the loan forgiveness. And number two, as part of the borrower's responsibility, is you are supposed to provide documentation to verify your payroll cost and the number of full-time equivalent FTE employees and the pay rates. It's the headcount and also the payroll. And the third thing is payments on eligible mortgage, which is interest on mortgage, lease, and utility obligation. I will cover the detailed documentation requirement later in the presentation as well. So you are supposed to provide all of this documentation along with the application. Completely filled out application and documentation needs to be submitted. And the third requirement as part of the borrower responsibility is part of the loan package is also a certification attestation as to the truth of the document and the information that you're providing as part of the application. So how do we get the PPP loan fully forgiven? What are the criteria? What are the conditions attached to the loan to be PPP loan to be forgiven? So loan proceeds must be used for certain expenses incurred and paid in connection with the borrower's trade or business. It has to be business related, and it has to be within that 8-week cover period, which is starting from the date of disbursement of the loan or the alternate pay period that we discussed that you choose to be aligned with your payroll. So it has to be during that 8-week period, paid and incurred. At least, so these are the two conditions. 75% of the loan proceeds must be used for payroll cost. If you spend less than 75%, there is a reduction forgiveness. So at least 75% has to be used on payroll cost, and not more than 25% of the loan proceeds must be used on interest on mortgage payments only, interest on mortgage payments, rent, and utilities. I've heard people asking me, I have an interest on a business line of credit or a business loan. Can I claim that? None of that is part of the PPP forgiveness. It is only the interest on mortgage payments, which is also very clear in the SBA application as well. So it's 75% on payroll, 25%, up to 25% on non-payroll cost. What is excluded from the forgiveness is if you have an employee whose annualized salary is more than 100,000, you can only include the salary up to 100,000 for forgiveness. And any of your employee resides outside United States, if their primary residence is not in United States, then you cannot claim their payroll. These are exclusions from forgiveness. And the employer portion of the FICA, Social Security, and Medicare, employer portion and FUTA taxes are not part of the forgiveness calculation. These are to be excluded. And qualified sick leave or family leave wages, which you already applied for a credit under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. If you applied for the credit as part of the Families First, then you have to exclude that wage also from your payroll calculation. So that is the 75-25 rule, and there are two other requirements that needs to be met as well to claim forgiveness. Here are the general requirements: reduction in the amount eligible for loan forgiveness, reduction in number of employees, it's the number of full-time equivalent employees, and a reduction in the salaries and wages, the total payroll cost. If there's any reduction in these two factors, that is going to impact your loan forgiveness amount. However, there are exemptions to this FTE and payroll cost reduction calculation. So as long as you rehired the employee by June 30th, 2020, you are exempt from the loan forgiveness exclusion. So for this purpose, the two FTE calculation, you are comparing the FTE as of February 15, 2020. So your payroll as of that date, how many employees you had in your payroll as of February 15th, if whether it's 8 or 10, or if let's say it's 10, by June 30th on your payroll that you're running on June 30th has to have the same number of FTE. Here is that's the comparison. February 15th is considered to be the pre-pandemic period. And so that's for the headcount. And restore salary and wage levels by June 30, 2020. You can reduce wages up to 25%, but anything over 25% reduction, let's say you paid an employee 100,000, you can reduce their salary up to reduction up to 75,000 is fine. But if you reduce their salary beyond 75,000, let's say you paid 74,000, then you get a proportionate reduction on your forgiveness as well. But the exemption here applies as long as you restore the wage from a 74,000 to 75,000 by June 30th, then you can claim exemption from the forgiveness reduction. So these are the general requirements, and here is the actual calculation based on the application that was released by SBA on May 15th. This is a summary, but we are going to go into the details as well. This is the first page of the application. So the loan forgiveness calculation is based on your payroll cost plus business mortgage interest payments plus business rent or lease payments plus business utility payments. So this box here is your total payroll and non-payroll cost. So that's equal to the total payroll and non-payroll cost. This gets reduced, the minus total salary or hourly wage reduction. If there's any reduction in the salary or hourly wages, more than 25% reduction gets reduced from the total payroll and non-payroll cost that we calculated here. So it gets reduced and then multiply that by the FTE reduction quotient. Meaning, let's say you had 10 employees as of February 15, 2020, and by June 30th, you only had 8 employees. So it's 10 divided by 8 is 80%. So that's the FTE reduction quotient. So the whatever sum you arrive at from your total payroll and non-payroll cost minus the salary wage reduction, that result of that multiplied by 80% is your what they call the modified total. So that is the calculation for the loan forgiveness. Your all of your payroll and non-payroll costs, sum of that, which gets reduced by any salary or hourly or salary wage reduction more than 25%. And then again, it's a further reduction by any reduction in FTE. That's the amount you arrive at, which is called the modified total. And your forgiveness is calculated. Forgiveness amount is the smallest of. So you have the result here, which is the modified total, either that amount or the actual PPP loan amount that you received or the payroll cost 75% requirement. So the modified total has to be at least 75%. So there's a calculation here to make sure it meets the 75% criteria. So you will have these three numbers. So whatever is the smallest is going to be your forgiveness amount. I'm going to show you more in an Excel spreadsheet as well. I know it's all more theory and it gets very confusing seeing at this level. It is a pretty complicated application that SBA released. It's not really very straightforward. It requires a lot of calculation and worksheet to go with it. We have actually built Excel spreadsheet to mimic the SBA application. So let's go into the actual application here. I have a link here with the SBA released guideline is 11-page document with both with instruction and application format. And it basically has four components, I would say. Number one is the loan forgiveness calculation form. And number two is the PPP Schedule A. And number three is the PPP Schedule A worksheet. This is, I would say, is the primary. You start with the worksheet detailing, listing all of the employees one by one, their payroll and the number of hours they work by each week. I'll show you in the later slides as well. Which then goes into the Schedule A and which then ties into the PPP loan forgiveness calculation. Number one, the calculation form here is actually the summary, and you do need to develop the worksheet to get to the PPP forgiveness calculation form. And the fourth requirement, which is optional, is the PPP borrower demographic information form. You are not required to submit this. So all borrowers are required to submit to their lender, number 1 and 2, which is the loan forgiveness calculation form and the Schedule A. If I click on this link, I'll just quickly show you how the 11-page document looks like. Oh, if it opens, okay, it's not opening. Maybe, sorry about that. There you go. So here is the 11-page guideline released by SBA. The first page is an instruction to actual the calculation form. Page 1 and 2 is the instruction. And page 3 is where the PPP loan forgiveness calculation form. The diagram I showed you in the previous slide is actually the representation of this forgiveness amount calculation. And page 4 is the certification that you're providing, and you'll be initialing each one of these statements and signing this page. And page 5, and I believe page 5 is the instruction to PPP Schedule A. And the page 6 is the actual Schedule A, and then and 7 and 8 is again instruction to the PPP Schedule A worksheet. And this is really how the worksheet looks like. And I'm going to go one by one in detail as well in my presentation. Let's go back here. Okay. So let's go into one by one into the application. The first section is the PPP loan forgiveness calculation form. So, which is on page 3 of the 11-page document. There are two sections here. Step 1 is the overview, and step 2 is the forgiveness amount calculation. So the step 1, here you are on the top, on the header level, you're filling in all of the basic, your company information, address, contact, which is very similar to the PPP application form. You can actually take that information from there. And in addition to that, you have to fill in the SBA loan number. After you are approved, everyone should have received the SBA loan number. It's actually in the promissory note that you signed. So you have to collect that number and fill it in here. And there is also a PPP loan number. This is something you have to get it from your banker or the lender who you worked with. This is something, it's an internal number with the banker or lender who you work with. And the actual PPP loan amount you fill in here, and the date of disbursement you fill it in here. And employees at the time of loan application, and employees at the time of forgiveness application, you have to fill in. All these yellow sections are needs to be filled in, and others are as part of the application. You also have to declare if you received any EIDL loan advance, which is the primarily the grant, which gets deducted from your loan forgiveness. So you're supposed to declare that here, and you also have to provide the EIDL application number here. Yeah, I think it's the submission number you have to fill in here in this application as well. You will have to mention whether you're on a weekly payroll, bi-weekly, your payroll schedule here. And here is the covered period and the alternative payroll cover period. So the cover period runs from the date of actual disbursement, and 8 weeks all the way through go through that. So if you receive the funds on April 1st, your 8-week period ends on May 26th. And if you decided to go with the alternative payroll cover period, if it's beneficial to you, then you mention your alternative payroll period, which aligns with your payroll start date. And then you also have to declare if you received any funds as an affiliate, and if it's over 2 million. So that's the top overview section. And step 2, where the forgiveness amount calculation. This is the diagram I showed you in the previous slide. You're adding up all of your payroll cost, mortgage interest, lease, and the utility payments in this section, payroll and non-payroll cost. And the second section is the adjustment for FTE and the salary or wage reduction. Line number 5, all of this is actually, it's not going to be a number that you're going to drop in. There are worksheets, which I'm going to cover in the latest slides, which the numbers from the worksheet comes into the summary form. You cannot directly calculate this number. It will be totally impossible to do that. So line 5 is where you provide the any reduction in the total payroll cost. And then this is all a formula. Then you add up all of the payroll cost minus the reduction is this, and multiplied by the FTE reduction quotient if there's any reduction in the FTE, whether it's 80%, 90%, or if there's no reduction, then if you had 10 employees February 15th and also 10 employees June 30th, it's going to be 10 divided by 10(1) is the quotient. So then you have no reduction in forgiveness. So here is those 3 amounts we talked about. So the modified total and the PPP loan amount 150,000. These are just examples. So, and the payroll cost 75% requirement, let's say it comes down to 98,000. Your forgiveness is the smallest of these 3 numbers. It's going to be 97,813 in this example. So that's a summary. And then so this is how the PPP Schedule A section looks like, and it has several parts. So number 1 is there's a table 1, and there's a table 1 and table 2. Table 1, you will be listing any employees whose annual payroll is less than 100,000. So you will be, as part of the PPP Schedule A worksheet, we will be listing each and every employee on your payroll. And on table A is where any employees who received an annual salary of less than 100,000 will be listing. And table 2, you will be listing any employee who received over 100,000. They are specifically having that split. And as part of these table 1 and 2, if you have the owner also included in the payroll, they are supposed to go in a separate section. If you see here, section 4, compensation to owners, whether they are already on W-2 or they are Schedule C, or if you're a partner, you're only making draws from the business, all of that goes in the compensation to owner section, not in the employee calculation table 1 and 2. And then the third section here is where the non-cash compensation, which is your mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. I'm sorry about that. So non-cash compensation payroll cost. So that's where you put in all your employee group health insurance, and if there's any employer contribution to retirement plans, goes here, and the state and local taxes goes in this section as well. So that's all of your components of payroll cost only. Sorry, the non-payroll cost is not here. It's only payroll cost. broken down by employees less than 100,000, more than 100,000, and in addition to the wages, if the employer contributed towards health insurance, retirement, and got the state and local taxes paid. So then the owner compensation. Line number 10 is the sum of all of these from line 1 to 9. And then you also have a calculation of the average FTE and what was the total average FTE end of week 8. And then you arrive at the FTE quotient here. So again, this is still, so Schedule A is still high level. You do need to fill out the Schedule A worksheet, which actually is here. And before I show you the actual spreadsheet, I will explain what's included in the worksheet as well. So like I mentioned in the previous slide, table 1, employees less than 100,000 annualized for any pay period, or if you hire someone new, they also go in the table A section. And there's also steps to calculate the wage reduction calculation. Determine if there's any reduction more than 25%, step 1. And if there's a more than 25% reduction, that's step 1. And then see if there is any wage reduction, and check if this safe harbor is met. Safe harbor is when, as long as you restore the head count and also the payroll cost by June 30th, then it doesn't go into the forgiveness reduction. And then step 3 is where you arrive at if there is any salary or hourly wage reduction based on this calculation. And table 2, you will list the employees over 100,000 annualized for any pay period. And then a summary, section 3 is a summary that ties out and goes into the PPP Schedule A. And then a 4th section is where the FTE reduction safe harbor calculation as well. So actually, I showed you the 11-page SBA application. We actually built a spreadsheet to replicate the exact application process in an Excel spreadsheet. It is impossible to directly fill in the PDF application released by SBA. There has to be calculation and formulas which ties into it moves from the Schedule A worksheet to the PPP Schedule A, which then rolls into the the first page PPP forgiveness calculation form. So we can mimic the same application in an Excel spreadsheet, which runs like this. Table 1, table 1, table 2, and then the wage reduction calculation as well. And then this is the summary, which will show if what is the total for payroll by employee. Let me just go back to the table here, which again has to be very detailed. If you see these sections here, you have to list each and every employee in this worksheet. It's not a total payroll cost calculation for the forgiveness. And this worksheet is mandatory as well, that you're supposed to maintain. This is not something you have to submit to the lender, but as part of the documentation requirement, you need to have this worksheet completed and stored for 6 years from the date of disbursement. Anytime SBA can come in and audit, and they can request for this document, and you should be in a position to produce it. So in a way, this is mandatory. So you are listing each and every employee here in the spreadsheet, and also employee identifier, which is the last 4 digit of the SSN, which is also part of the PPP application released by SBA. And the cash compensation is the gross payroll, and what is the average FTE depending on the number of hours they worked. And so all of this information is needed for your PPP Schedule A, and which then rolls into the loan forgiveness calculation. So we built the spreadsheet so it all rolls into the final form, summary form. And table 2 is where, again, same thing, any employee over 100,000, but you are restricting the compensation 100,000, but still you have to show them separately in table 2. And then the summary here will actually calculate whether there will be any reduction in forgiveness based on the FTE reduction or the payroll cost reduction. And if you have a safe harbor, how all of that rolls into this calculation. So once this is all completed, the next requirement is the documentation, as I explained in the previous slides. So here are the documentation you are supposed to submit along with your application. For the application, you're submitting the payroll summary calculation form, number one, and then number two is the PPP Schedule A. And the third requirement is the documentation to support all of your numbers. So there are documentation requirement for your payroll and non-payroll cost, FTE reductions, either the number of reductions or the total cost reduction. And for non-payroll, I will go through one by one as well. And there's also, in addition to the payroll, non-payroll, and FTE, you also have to have other documentation which you're not required to submit. I'll go through that when you go back here. So as far as payroll, here are the specific documents that you are supposed to submit along with the application. So either the bank account statement or your payroll provider report showing the cash compensation paid to your employees. Many of the payroll providers like ADP, Paychecks, and Gusto, they are already creating these reports and making it available to make your application process easier. If you're working with anyone else, I believe even if any other small payroll provider, they are coming up with these reports which is readily available, and you can provide that. Or you can show your bank account where the payroll disbursements went from. So you can show that as a proof for making the payroll disbursement. Either the bank statement or a report that is directly generated by your payroll provider. And you also have to submit your payroll reports, the 941s, tax forms, or equivalent third-party payroll service provider reports for the period that overlap with the covered period or the alternate pay period, which is typically the 941s, and any state-specific payroll reports that you submitted, you're supposed to submit that as well. And the payment receipts or canceled checks or account statements documenting the amount of any employer contribution. So with the payroll, it's not with the payroll cost, it's the actual payroll paid to the employee plus the health insurance and retirement contributions and state and local taxes. So this number C, the C section is the proof for paying your group health insurance and contribution towards retirement, and the state and local taxes, which should be already part of the payroll provider report as well. So these documentations are required. It's already listed in the PPP application by SBA. This has to go with the application. And as far as the FTE, you have to go provide documentation showing the average number of FTE employees on payroll between February 15, 2019 and June 30, 2019, the prior year. During this period, February 15 to June 30th, or if your business was not in operations during that time, you can choose to provide your payroll report for the period between January 1st, 2020 and February 29, 2020. You can is one or the other. In case of a seasonal, you have a different pay period to choose from to prove the number of FTE that you actually had on payroll. And that's for the FTE requirements. And then as far as the non-payroll cost, which is the mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, there are two kinds of proof that you have to provide. One is the existence of those services prior to February 15, 2020. So if it's a rent, you have a rental agreement with your landlord. So you might be renewing it every year. So you should have the most recent rental agreement ready. It could be like beginning of the year, January 1st, or if your rent could have started at a different period. So you need to have the rental agreement. That's number one. Proof for service is number one. And number two is the eligible payments, proof for making those payments during that 8-week cover period. So for any non-payroll cost, it's two requirements. One, the proof of existence of the service prior to February 15, and number two is actually paying those bills during that 8-week period. So if you take your business mortgage interest payments, copy of lender mortgage amortization schedule, and receipts, either a receipt or canceled check that showing that you made those payments during the cover period. And in case of rent, the same thing, your rental agreement and the receipt for making payments in May and June. In case of utility payments, the same thing. Proof that you had the service, so proof for that you won't have any agreements for utilities, so you could provide invoices from February 2020, and also proof for payments during that 8-week period. It could be your actual bill and how you made payments, like copy of the checks and any account statements to verify that you made those payments. So these documents are mandatory. This must be submitted along with your application to apply for forgiveness. That's on the non-payroll cost. And here is the set of documents. These are not required to be submitted with your forgiveness application, but you are required to maintain it. And it's a must. It's not like optional. You're supposed to maintain these documents and for 6 years from the date of disbursement. And anytime SBA comes out with an audit or requests any of this document, you should be in a position to submit it. So, PPP Schedule A worksheet, which I showed you as is the basis for your PPP Schedule A preparation and also the calculation of the actual forgiveness. So you would obviously have this, but just in case you decided to just throw in the numbers directly in Schedule A without doing the detailed employee-wise breakdown, just make sure you have this worksheet also in your documentation. So yeah, the Schedule A, the worksheet table 1, table 2, and also documentation regarding any employee job offers, refusals, firing for cause, voluntary resignation, written request by any employee for reduction in work schedule. So all of this needs to be documented to get exemption from the forgiveness reduction. So now with the employee reduction for either they're refusing to come back because their unemployment is much better, you also as an employer is supposed to notify the unemployment agency that the employee was offered a job and they refused to accept it. You are supposed to notify unemployment as well as an employer. So documentation supporting PP for the FTE reduction safe harbor. As long as the worksheet, the 4th section I showed you, as long as you fill those in, that covers all of this A, B, C, and D requirements. Not C. C is the documentation that you need to have. It could be email. Don't do any of this conversation over phone. You need to have written proof that that you offered the job or for the salary that you offered and they refused. All of that has to be in a written document. And borrower must retain all of these documentation in its files for 6 years after the date the loan is forgiven or repaid in full. This statement is key here because it's not 6 years from the date of disbursement. If you go look at it, 6 years from the date the loan is forgiven. So after the end of 8-week period, you'll be gathering documents. Let's say you are submitting for your loan forgiveness application week 9 or week 10. Then from the date of your submission, the lender or the bank has 60 days to make a decision on your loan forgiveness. So from the 8-week period, it can be another 60 days, so maybe another 2 months. So it's about 4 months for you to get for you to hear back on the loan forgiveness. So 6 years after the date the loan is forgiven or repaid in full, that can add too. So if your loan is 100% forgiven, then it's just that 4-month period, but or repaid in full. Let's say you didn't get 100% forgiveness, you got a 90% forgiveness and you still had the 10% that you have to pay back in 2 years. So this word here, repaid in full, kicks in. So it's from 6 weeks after the repayment. So you have 2 years to repay. So 2 years plus the 6 years adds from the end of repayment period. So it can go up to 8 years in case you didn't get 100% forgiveness. So I would say just think that you have to maintain all of these documents for 8 years. If you got 100% forgiveness, it is 6 years. But if it was even 99% forgiveness, you're supposed to retain these documents for 8 years. Oh, that's the end of my presentation. I can open for any questions. Let me see if there's any questions already here in the chat. See, I don't see any questions. So if you want to post any questions, please feel free. I see a few people on the call still. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you want me to unmute you, I can do that too. Any questions, anyone? Make sure I'm not missing it. Any questions, anyone? Am I missing? I don't see any questions. I don't know if I'm missing it, missing to see it. If you have any questions which if you cannot ask now, feel free to email me. My email is jay@finaccurate.com, and you can contact me at 617-838-7724, or if you want advice on your specific situation and help with documentation. Like I said, we built this spreadsheet which actually ties very nicely to the actual forgiveness calculation. And like I said, it's not an easy application that the SBA require us to submit. You need to have the application replicated in an Excel spreadsheet with formulas which ties to the forgiveness calculation. You built the spreadsheet. You have even option. We can share the spreadsheet also with you, but we could charge a small fee for it because it took a lot of time and effort to build the spreadsheet. So you could either purchase the spreadsheet from us, or if you need help with the total calculation and any advice on how the FTE reduction works, or the payroll cost reduction works, safe harbor rules and stuff like that. If you want us to help with the whole thing, we provide that service also. You can reach out to me directly via email, or you can call me to learn more. Any questions? Make sure I'm not, yeah, I don't see any questions here. Nothing on the chat as well. Okay, if there are no questions, I am going to end this webinar here. You just wait for a minute or so. If you want to ask a question, type in the chat. Let me know in the chat. I can go take it as well. Let me make sure. No, I didn't get anything on the chat either. I know it's not the easy topic. I didn't expect the PPP application to be this complicated. I believe the actual loan application wasn't as crazy as this. So I don't know if it's purposely they're doing it, or making the forgiveness so tough so people are not misusing it. So yeah, it is a complicated application process, and even if you make any mistake in how you calculate the reduction, you can either claim less forgiveness or more forgiveness, which makes you obligated towards how you did the calculation and all that. So yeah, please make sure you're spending enough time on completing the spreadsheet before you go submitting to the bank for loan forgiveness. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. I don't see any questions. Oh, wait, I believe there is something. Is there a difference between accrual and cash payment of salaries? Yes and no, I would say. The only exception is the end of 8-week period. Like I said, let's say your 8-week period ends on June 15th, and your payroll disbursement is not until June 17th. So you're actually paying, the cash goes out 2 days later, but up to June 15th, you incurred the payroll. So in your case, when you say accrual, it's the incurred. The payroll is incurred, but it's not paid. To meet the incurred and paid criteria, the only exception they are allowing, SBA is allowing, is towards the last pay period. Towards the end of the 8-week, if as long as you've made that payment before the next pay period starts, you can still include that payroll in your forgiveness calculation. That's the only place there's an exception between incurred and paid. Every other purposes, during the 8-week period, you should have both incurred and paid the payroll and non-payroll expenses. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see anything else. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar. Reach out to me if you have any other questions after this time, and I will also send an email to everyone with my contact information. Thank you. Oh, sorry, we pay payroll bi-weekly and got the loan on April, and do we need to prorate? Yes, if you're not opting for the alternate pay period, then you do have to prorate it. You do have the option to change your 8-week period start date to align with your payroll. So if you opt for that, then you don't have to prorate. If you don't do it, then you do have to prorate to align with the date of disbursement as the day one for the 8-week calculation. Any other questions? Anyone else? Okay. I will end it here. Thanks everyone for joining.